Artbox. My name is Deborah and this is another Craft With Me tutorial. Today we're going to be making shaker molds or shaker keychains made out of resin, particularly UV resin. So I worked with UV resin in the last Craft With Me tutorial, and that was an experiment to see if I wanted to continue the project further or with that medium further. And as you can see, I went a little overboard with the spending of UV resin and the project. So ultimately my goal was to make keychain shakers. Anything beyond that, I'm not sure I'm gonna continue. If you're starting out with resin and you're joining me right now, resin is a very expensive hobby to have. So if you're gonna start it, I would say to start off very small just to see if you like it first. So I started off with the Sophie and Toffee kit, starter kit. You can do the same, although I don't really recommend Sophie and Toffee because of how high they price things and the fact that they didn't provide all the materials that were needed to do the project. So if I were you, I would start out with something like jewelry and a small amount of UV resin and one silicone mixing cup and some tools, and that's about it. But the shaker that we're making today is full-blown UV resin and pretty much I did get a few practice rounds in, so I think I am confident enough to go through what is needed and how to do it. So the first tool you're going to need, and I know this whole thing looks like a mess, but we're going to use all of this and probably more. The first thing you're going to need is a mask. Now, this is very important when you're working with any kind of chemical. UV resin, even though I know some people are like, oh, it's just a little amount of UV resin, it's not going to hurt you. I know people who have gotten really sick off of UV resin. So make sure that you purchase yourself a good mask with filters to filter out the smell of UV resin. And it's good to have too, especially if you're going to go into the two-part epoxy resin. So if you are getting into this sort of resin world, make sure you get yourself a good mask. Make sure you get yourself some gloves to work with as well. As with any chemicals, it can irritate the skin, so make sure you get a pair of gloves to work with. The first step in the shaker, I'm actually putting a photo in my shaker. So I printed a photo on matte sticker paper with my inkjet printer, and I stuck it on a piece of film, and the film is the film that you use for the covering of the shaker, which you'll see later. And what I do with that is I take the Mod Podge, which you should have in your house because Mod Podge is a water-based sealer glue and it works with a bunch of different things. But for this project, we are sealing the sticker to the film, and we're sealing it because we're putting it in liquid. So I don't want the liquid to bleed into the image and then it doesn't look right, or it starts blurring or something like that, or you know, the liquid just runs the ink. So Mod Podge will seal that, and I'll probably put like 3 coats of it. So the other tool you're going to need obviously is a brush to spread the Mod Podge. You're going to need some UV lights. So I have the portable UV light and I also have the standing UV light. You're going to need a mixing cup. You can have more than one. You can get these on Amazon. So this one's a silicone mixing cup. You're going to need your shaker mold, some silicone tools to work with for the resin. You're going to need the little sparkles or anything that you want to put inside of your shaker. So I have 2 bottle vials of stars that I'm putting inside of the shaker for the liquid, as well as the 2 little circle and star thing here to put in. The sparkles are going within the resin with the pigment. So this is opaque pigment that you put in the resin to give the resin a color. Now I got mine from Amazon again. This is Let's Resin. There's a whole box set of them. And they turn out like a nice marbly green color. So I know for my project that mine is going to be green. Then a pair of scissors to cut out. You want to have a little vial like this to fill your shaker with baby oil. So you want to have baby oil and you want to have one of these little needle point fillers. So the reason that I film mine with baby oil is because the water tends to yellow over time. Baby oil does not, and also that it slows the shaker bits from going really, like there's no resistance. So I like my stuff to go a little bit slower. Key findings to make the keychain with. I also have a hand drill. Now some people have a manual drill, either or is fine. Mine is a hand because my hand hurts from doing too much gaming, so I got myself a hand drill. I don't have a heat gun, so what I usually use to pop the bubbles of the resin is a lighter. This is the cheap version of popping bubbles with resin. Silicone mats, so I have 2 silicone mats here, which I am going to use. And I believe that's it. If I'm missing anything else, I'll probably let you know within the video. We're gonna get started on the project, and let's get to it. So with the Mod Podge, you want to apply a little bit to your brush and start stroking the image at an angle. You want to go in different directions when you are applying Mod Podge, just so that when it dries, it's sealed on all angles. So you don't want to go in one particular direction. You want to make sure that you cover all your bases. Once that dries, you'll want to put probably about 3 to 4 coats. And each time you have to let it dry. And make sure that the clumps, you get rid of the clumps with your brush as you're going so that it does dry correctly and clear without the clumps. So now that the Mod Podge is dry, you're going to want to cut out the circle and the film with the sticker. You can see on the edges that the Mod Podge is sealed to the film in different directions. So I'll start cutting it and then we'll continue. So you want to take your resin and pour it into the mixing cup. Try to pour it all the way up to the rim. Once you've poured the resin in, you want to put the mica powder and any sparkles you want to put in as embellishment into the resin. Then use your mixing tool and mix it thoroughly together. Once you've mixed it thoroughly, you'll want to pour it into your mold and get your light set up. So pouring the resin into the mold, make sure that you don't go outside of the mold, and the resin will level itself out so long as your surface area is level. So here I didn't make enough resin, that's why I said to fill it up to the top. So I had to make a little more to fill the rest of the mold. So once it's all poured in, it will level itself out in the mold. Make sure you take your torch or your lighter and blow out the bubbles before you put it under the blue light. I didn't do it for this one because I forgot, but it still turned out okay. However, if you have a torch or a light, make sure you pass it over the mold before you put it under the blue light. The blue light, you can leave it under for about 15 minutes on each side. So you'll do one side, the back side first, then you turn it over on the white side and do 15 minutes on that side as well. This is to make it hard. So now I'm pulling out the resin from the mold. Now, make sure your resin is hard when it comes out. You can cut off excess resin if it's not too hard, but you do want to make sure that your resin is somewhat hard before you do the next step. which is taking the photo and putting it inside of the mold, then taking clear resin and pouring a small layer on top of the image. Spread out the UV resin with your silicone tool and make sure the entire image is covered with clear resin. This is to make sure the liquid doesn't get into the photo as well, an extra precaution. I fill the drill holes from the mold with resin because I usually fill my shakers in the film area. So I put a hole in the film itself to fill the shaker with baby oil. So this is what I mean with the torch. To blow out the bubbles, you just pass it over the resin. Then put it under the blue light. So I seal the holes at the top. So with your film, you're going to want to punch a small hole about 10 millimeters in and place the hole at the top of the shaker. So you see me punching a hole, you can get this small hole punch at Curry's or Michael's if you're in Canada. You punch a hole in it. Once the hole is punched, you'll want to take your shaker items and put them in the center of the shaker. So you'll see in my video that I put the resin on first, which I shouldn't have done. So for you, you'd want to take your shaker items and put them all in the center and then do this step that I'm doing right now with the resin going around the ring. So here I realized, I forgot to put the shaker items in. So I put the shaker items in the center so they do not touch the resin, because if they touch the resin, they'll get stuck. You also want to make sure that your image is fully hardened, the resin underneath, so that the shaker items don't stick to it. Once the shaker items are in the middle and everything that you wanted in there is in there, you want to take your film and you want to use your tweezers to press down the film on all angles so that it hardens correctly and the baby oil doesn't spill out. So you tap the film into the resin that you put around the ring, and then you put it under the blue light. If you don't do this step, again, it'll leak. So put it under the blue light. Once that's dry, you're going to want to take your needle bottle and pour the baby oil in at an angle from the top. So try not to overflow it, because if you overflow it, then the resin when you're doming is not going to look right. So use a Q-tip or a paper towel to wipe the baby oil from the hole and make sure it's clean. You can use rubbing alcohol to clean it as well. Put a dot of UV resin over the hole, then put it under the light again. Keep in mind with UV resin, I usually put it under the light, if it's a small one coat, for about 5 minutes. Up, you're going to want to dome your piece, and to do that you put the clear coat of resin on top, use your tool to spread it out and make sure the entire surface is covered. Keep in mind that when you are doming, you don't want it to overflow. There are mats you can buy where it doesn't overflow, it'll go down into a grate, but I don't have that mat, so just be very careful when you're doming. Less is more, so if you put your resin in the center, you can dome it from the center outward. So I'm just checking to see that everything is covered. Then put under your, use the torch to blow up bubbles, and then put it under your light. So after the resin is hardened, I put the resin in water and then put it under a blue light again. This will get rid of any tackiness or stickiness. If your resin has that texture after you have put it under the blue light, it'll get rid of the oxidization and kind of evaporate within the water. I'm getting the hand drill and the key findings ready to drill after it's dried. So here I'm drilling a hole at the top where it should be. You're going to want to get your portable blue light as well because we're going to put a bit of resin on the key finding as we're screwing it in or after we screw it in. I'm not sure which one I did for this one. Sometimes I dip it in. So you want to screw it in part way and then use a pair of pliers or tweezers to screw it in the full way. So yeah, it looks like I did it after. The other ones I dipped it in resin, then screwed it in, and then applied a little bit of resin in the hole. This is to close up the hole because some of the baby oil will leak out if the finding goes through the resin. Then you use the blue light to harden it. You can leave the blue light on it for about 5-10 minutes. And that's basically it. That's the gift that I'm giving to my sister. Some of the, as you can see, charms got stuck to the resin image. That's because I didn't wait long enough for it to dry, but otherwise it works and functions the way that it should. So yeah, thanks for joining me and hope you liked the video.